A 50-year-old Spanish man, skinny as a rail, puts on a set of tattered armor handed down from his grandfather, mounts a scraggly old horse, and holds up a rusty lance, declaring that he will go out to save the world. He mistakes windmills for giants, flocks of sheep for armies, country inns for castles, and a sturdy peasant girl for a peerless beauty. Everyone says he's crazy. But over 400 years have passed, and the name of this madman has become synonymous with idealists around the world. His name is Don Quixote, the protagonist of the novel written by Cervantes in 1605, widely regarded as the first modern novel in Western literary history. Today, we are not just here to talk about a funny old madman. What we're really here to discuss is this: when reality tells you stop dreaming, do you have the courage to charge at the windmills one more time? I'm Sunshine, and welcome to today's episode of Delusion. The story begins in a small, ordinary village in Spain's La Mancha region. A country gentleman named Alonso Quijano, over 50 years old, living an unremarkable and modest life, has one true passion: reading chivalry novels. The more he reads, the more obsessed he becomes. Eventually, he begins to believe that all those stories are real, that knights truly exist, dragons roam the lands, and beautiful princesses await rescue. He makes an earth-shattering decision: he wants to become a knight-errant, wandering the world to vanquish evil and uphold justice. He renames himself Don Quixote, dubs his frail, bony horse Rocinante, and declares a sturdy farmwoman he's never even met, Dulcinea, as the peerless lady to whom he will dedicate his life. Then he persuades his neighbor, Sancho Panza, to join him as his squire, promising that one day, he'll conquer an island and make Sancho its governor. And so, astride a horse and a donkey, this mismatched pair sets out on their grand adventure. What follows is one of the most classic sequences of misunderstandings in all of literary history. He mistakes 30 to 40 windmills for giants and charges at them with his lance, only to be flung to the ground by the windmill blades, injured half to death. He claims it's the work of enchanters who have turned the giants into windmills. He mistakes 2 flocks of sheep for opposing armies engaged in battle, rushes into the fray, stabbing wildly, and ends up getting pummeled by shepherds throwing stones, losing several of his teeth. He sees a group of guards transporting prisoners and believes them to be villains, so he charges in to free the convicts, only for them to repay him by pelting him and Sancho with stones. Yet, here's the curious thing: no matter how battered and bruised Don Quixote gets, he never doubts himself. It's not that he can't feel the pain. He simply believes that true knights are meant to endure suffering. To him, every failure is a test, not an endpoint. And what about Sancho? This short, stout farmer initially joins Don Quixote just for the promise of an island. He's timid, pragmatic, a glutton, and inherently lazy, an absolute realist. He frequently tries to reason with Don Quixote, saying, "My lord, that's a windmill, not a giant." But Don Quixote never listens. Interestingly, after following this madman for a while, Sancho slowly changes. He starts to learn to see things through Don Quixote's perspective, and later, when he actually does get the chance to serve as governor, he surprises everyone by demonstrating fairness and wisdom. The second part of the story turns even crueler. A duke and duchess invite Don Quixote to their castle, pretending to lavish him with hospitality but are, in fact, mocking him. They humor his delusions to his face while ridiculing his madness behind his back. The entire aristocratic society exploits the sincerity of this idealist for their own amusement. Finally, Don Quixote is defeated by someone impersonating a knight. As per their agreement, Don Quixote is forced to renounce his identity as a knight and return home to live quietly. Back in his hometown, he suddenly awakens to reality. He says, "I am no longer Don Quixote, I am Alonso Quijano." He rejects all his adventures, condemns chivalry novels, and denies the idealistic version of himself that once burned so brightly with dreams. Then, he dies. The most heartbreaking moment occurs when, in his moment of clarity, Sancho, who had spent the entire story persuading him to stop dreaming, cries and begs him, "My lord, don't die, don't give up." Maybe Dulcinea is just beyond that grove of trees. the man who had once least believed in dreams becomes their staunchest guardian. Let's begin with our first topic. What is true madness? Is Don Quixote mad? On the surface, of course he is. Anyone who mistakes windmills for giants or flocks of sheep for armies would be sent to a psychiatric ward in any era. But what makes Cervantes so brilliant is that after making you laugh at Don Quixote, he suddenly makes you stop laughing. If you think more deeply, where is Don Quixote's madness rooted? It lies in his belief in justice, courage, and the idea that one person can change the world. When he sees someone being bullied, he charges forward. When he encounters injustice, he draws his sword. When he encounters the weak, he extends his hand. His methods may be absurd, but his intentions are nobler than most so-called normal people. Cervantes himself was a living embodiment of Don Quixote. In his youth, he was a soldier who fought in the Battle of Lepanto, where he was wounded by gunfire that paralyzed his left hand for life. While returning home, he was captured by pirates and spent 5 years imprisoned in North Africa, attempting to escape 4 times and failing each time. When he finally returned to Spain, he became a tax collector, only to be thrown into jail when the bank where he deposited funds went bankrupt. It was in prison, penniless and abandoned by the world, that this one-handed man began to write Don Quixote. So, Don Quixote's madness carries the blood and tears of Cervantes. It is not a mockery from an observer but the self-portrait of a kindred spirit. Cervantes is asking, after enduring so much suffering, can one still dare to believe in ideals? His answer is yes, even if the entire world laughs at you. It makes me think about our own lives. When did we start believing that dreaming was shameful? When we said as children, I want to be an astronaut, everyone praised us for having ambition. But when we say at 25, I want to quit my job to become a painter, everyone says we're being unrealistic. What happened in between? Perhaps it's not the dreams that changed, but the fact that we learned a word, reality. Reality tells us that windmills are just windmills, not giants. But the problem is, if you only ever see windmills, you'll never challenge anything. Now let's move to our second topic, who needs whom more, idealists or realists? What's most moving in Don Quixote is not the man himself but the pairing of Don Quixote and Sancho. One is tall and thin, mad, and filled with ideals, the other is short and plump, timid, and steeped in worldly wisdom. One gazes at the stars, the other keeps his feet firmly on the ground. Together, they are like the two sides of a single person, dreams and reality. Cervantes constructed an incredibly intricate narrative structure. As the story progresses, Don Quixote and Sancho start influencing and changing each other. Don Quixote doesn't become more normal, but Sancho gradually evolves from a simple, self-serving farmer into a man with discernment, compassion, and even the wisdom to govern. Sancho's time as governor is one of the highlights of the entire book. His judgments are fair, his decisions are brilliant, and even the nobles who set traps to humiliate him secretly admire him. What does this tell us? It shows that idealism is contagious. Although Don Quixote is mocked, beaten, and ridiculed at every turn, in the eyes of the mundane world, a complete failure, he changes those closest to him. Through Don Quixote, Sancho sees something he never had, an unwavering belief in the good. Conversely, Sancho also protects Don Quixote. Without Sancho's care, Don Quixote might have starved to death in the wilderness. Idealists need pragmatic partners to manage the day-to-day survival matters, just as realists need a dreamer to remind them that life is more than drudgery. Do you have such a duo in your life? Someone always dreaming big, while the other constantly pours cold water. You might think the one throwing cold water is smarter, but over time, you'll realize it's the dreamer who brings light to your life. Our third topic is clarity, salvation or death. The book's most heartbreaking moment is not when Don Quixote is knocked down by windmills or when he's bloodied by stones, but the ending. He returns to his hometown, lies in bed, and suddenly declares, I am awake now. All chivalry novels are lies. I am no longer Don Quixote, I am Alonso Quixano. Everyone breathes a sigh of relief, he's finally normal. But 3 days after regaining his so-called clarity, he dies. This is Cervantes' most profound metaphor. Don Quixote's clarity is his death. When he stops believing that windmills are giants, that justice can be achieved with a lance, and that Dulcinea is the most beautiful woman in the world, he loses his reason to live. His madness wasn't a sickness, it was his very life force. Sancho's reaction in this moment brings tears to readers' eyes. He kneels by the bedside crying and pleads, "My lord, don't die. Please just listen to me and live a few more years." Perhaps our Lady Dulcinea is hiding behind one of those trees. Think about it. The same Sancho who spent the entire book persuading Don Quixote to wake up becomes the only person begging him to keep dreaming when he finally does wake up. Sancho has finally realized that the mad Don Quixote is the one worth following, while a sane Alonso Quixano is just an ordinary old man at the end of his life. What does this mean for us? Perhaps it means that some things are more important than clarity. Clarity makes you see the world's harsh truths, but faith gives you the courage to face them. A person can clearly know windmills are just windmills and still choose to charge at them. That's not madness, it's a higher form of clarity. Knowing the world is hard but still daring to try. Knowing you might fail but still setting out. Knowing no one may understand you but still holding firm. That's what has made Don Quixote resonate with people for 4 centuries. Now let me share a few quotes from the book that moved me deeply. The first, "Freedom is the greatest treasure given by heaven, worth more than all the buried riches in the earth and the sea. Like dignity, it is worth fighting for with one's life." These words, spoken by a man everyone considers mad, carry an extraordinary power. He may not be able to tell a windmill from a giant, but he understands freedom better than anyone. The second, "I know that recklessness and cowardice are both faults, and the virtue of bravery lies in the balance between the two. But it's better to be too brave and reckless than not brave enough and cowardly." This is practically Don Quixote's life in one sentence. He'd rather make mistakes by being too brave than regret being too timid. And there's a quote I particularly love: "Fortune is a capricious, blind creature who bumps into whoever she pleases, knocking some down and lifting others up, without even knowing what she's doing." How insightful this is. Fate is random and unreasonable. But Don Quixote's choice is that if fate stumbles blindly, he will insist on living with his eyes open. In the end, let's reflect on what Don Quixote leaves us. More than 400 years ago, Cervantes wrote this story in a prison cell, probably never imagining that the name Don Quixote would become a universal symbol of the human spirit. Whenever someone mocks idealists for being impractical or delusional, someone will inevitably bring up Don Quixote. He is not perfect, in fact, he is often ridiculous. He cannot distinguish reality from fantasy, he causes endless trouble for those around him, and each of his adventures ends in failure. But he accomplishes something most people cannot, he keeps setting out. In truth, we all have a Don Quixote and a Sancho inside us. Don Quixote whispers, "Go on, give it a try," while Sancho pulls at your sleeve saying, "Forget it, it's too risky." Most of the time, we choose to listen to Sancho. But occasionally, in the deep of night, in a moment when life seems to hold no surprises, Don Quixote will rise within you, dust himself off and say, "There's a windmill up ahead. Shall we charge at it?" I hope that when that moment comes, your answer will be yes. That's all for this episode. No matter where or when you're listening, I wish you a good morning, a good afternoon, and a good night. This is Delusion. Until next time.